To get back to the discussion you were having about stealth earlier, about the way you're facing someone and how that impacts your stealth, that
Hmm.
has to do with the cross section. Cross section is basically like your physical size of your ship. And obviously, if somebody's looking at you from top down, that's like the biggest face of your ship. But if you're looking at somebody dead ahead or from the back, your cross section is smaller, so your detectable range is higher. They'd have to be closer to you to detect you.
So
So that's
if I'm flying and my broadside is at you, I can be further away and you can detect me easier.
Yeah.
Mm. But so
Um,
if I'm spinning and doing donuts, I'm gonna. Does it like blink on your radar?
well, I think technically it may like go in and out of detectable range. If you've never noticed while you're flying around in space, you might see a ship appear or disappear on the HUD, and that might be because it's right on the edge of being detectable, and between your velocity and that ship's velocity, it may be moving in and out of detection range, and that's why it's popping in and out of your HUD and showing up on the radar. But once you're within a certain amount of range, it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to detect it. Now
What what is
that
that range? Is it like
well,
10K?
it depends on how big the ship is and about what your emissions are.
so I'm
So
gonna
if
hit
you're
you. Go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead, Broccoli, jump in. You're more probably more well versed in this than I am.
Well, I was gonna give a hot take. I think cross section in Star Citizen, as they now plan to have it, I think it shouldn't exist. I think having two ways, EM and IR, are plenty, but having cross section where you have to essentially park out front of every mission you want to do, leaving yourself completely exposed for whoever flies up and automatically detects you, means that your ship's just going to constantly die. And if they want us to like have our ships for a long time, if they're completely powered off, they should be undetectable unless you can see it with the naked eye.
Well, hold on. You said EM and IR. So EM is electromagnetic.
Yeah, it's what your like what your components are pumping out.
Like the electrical signature, basically.
Yeah.
And
And
then IR is how much heat you're pumping out, and then cross section is like your physical signature that the radar can reflect back.
so
But
what
you know,
does that translate to like in game? Like what am I
just
doing?
distance. The bigger you are, the further away you can be detected by another ship, right?
But I guess what I mean is, am I picking both the EM and IR? Am I picking up both of those
Well,
on
it
my
depends
like?
what's higher. For example, like I'm sitting in a vulture right now, right? And I have power to my scraper modules, so that's generating a lot of heat. So right now my IR signature is 13.5, but my cross section, which is 12.5, that's not the cross section of just one face of my ship. That is like the average cross section. If you average the visible cross section of, it's like an average of front,
That's an
Hmm.
average.
top, and
Know that.
side. Now, the reason why cross section becomes different than the other two, IR and EM, is because you can change your orientation to someone that's trying to detect you. So if you face them with your smallest side, they have a less chance of detecting you. They have to be closer to you. So in this case, let's say my cross section, for the sake of argument, my cross section on this vulture is 12.5K. My IR currently is 13.5K. So
Hmm.
they would likely detect me via IR before they would detect me via cross section based on those numbers. If those numbers are all relative to each other in strength and value,
Hmm.
which I don't really know 100%, but let's assume they are.
Gotcha.
Then there's another. If you look in your power management, where the IR, EM, and cross section indications are, there's two numbers for each. There's a top number and a bottom number. The top number, which is usually in red or whatever color is your HUD, it may be bolded, green if you're in an Aegis ship or something. I happen to be in a Drake ship, so it's red. And then there's a lower number that's in the Drake ship, it's yellow. The top number, from my understanding, is what your ship is actually emitting for that stat. So 13.5 for IR for me, 7.4 for EM, and 12.5 for cross section.
That's the
Now,
squiggly lines, and then they're at the top of your HUD.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's like
then
three of
and
them.
then and then in some ships there are icons, and in the Drake ship it's actually a letter code like IR and
Oh,
EM.
Okay.
So then there's a lower number. The number below that top number is what the environment has. So right now I'm in 13.5K IR, but around me is 14K or 14.0 IR. So it's not 14K, it's 14. In other words, there's like 1400 of infrared 14 infrared emissions. Now if the infrared emissions were 14,000, the surrounding environment would more or less block being my ship being able to be detected because it's higher than my ship is putting out. It'd be almost like a camouflage.
Okay. This is that makes sense. That
So,
part. I guess
so
my curiosity is then so you're always going to look then, or I guess the most important number to you is always going to be the highest number, right?
yeah, that's the thing that's detectable. But for instance, let's say you're in pyro and you're in a dogfight and you're in a fighter, and if you ever notice, like in some of those asteroid bases and those nebula clouds, in some of those, the IR or the emissions, the lower number is like off the scale, and it's basically blocking
right.
detection of, because you're like, if you're doing stealthy components, your EM number might be super low, and the surrounding environment around your ship is way higher than that, so it's kind of like cloaking you. But that's only effective to a point because your cross section can never be cloaked by the environment. Eventually, once you get close enough to someone, they're going to pop up on your radar. Then you'll be able to lock them, and as long as you stay close, you won't lose lock.
Right. So I guess for an example, like in the Prowler's got a cross section of 10,000, but its IR and EM numbers are 2,500.
Yeah, they're super low.
They're super low. They never get anywhere near as high as the cross section number.
Hmm.
Does that pretty much mean I'm going to be detected typically, almost always through the cross section?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's and for instance, also, if I'm an attacker trying to attack your prowler, I want to use a missile that's based on cross section, because there's three types of missiles. There's the IR missile, the EM missile, and the cross section missile.
Right. Okay.
So if I know I'm about to go attacking a prowler, I want to load up cross section missiles because effectively the cross section of your ship is going to be the biggest number, so that's going to be the easiest number to
Yeah,
detect
by a
and to
ways.
try to lock on and hit. Now that's all there. That's how it's supposed to work, technically, lore wise and in game mechanics. But some of this stuff is so iffy and wishy washy. Sometimes it works like that. Sometimes it doesn't.
I think cross section in its current iteration, where anyone can be picked up, powered on or not, should
Hmm.
go away just for a game health point of view. Because everyone, you go to a bunker or something like that, you got to park outside, you got to leave your ship. What's stopping someone from just coming up and destroying your ship because it has, what was the cross section of the Prowler? Someone sees it like 10 kilometers
Yeah,
away.
10 kilometers.
And
Yeah.
they're like, all right, yeah, there's a ship that's completely alone that I can pick up from 10 kilometers away. I'm just gonna go destroy it.
I
But
agree with you on the game thing. It is a lot having three different levels.
the counter argument for that, because I've heard this argument before, and the counter that I heard to it was that, well, that's why you want a bigger ship, a physically larger ship should have a larger cross section compared to a smaller ship, and those should be weighted more in line with physical size, right, and mass,
Hmm.
and therefore, if you're trying to be stealthy, you would want to come in a smaller less easily detectable ship, whereas a larger ship like a Corsair or a Connie that has a way larger cross section should be picked up further away because it's physically bigger. So,
Is,
in
is there
you know, I'm just
anything
playing
to
devil's advocate. I don't like the cross section mechanic either, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I imagine the cross section mechanic. Is there anything to the because we have certain ships, whether it be kind of like the Prowler or the Saber, even that have I don't know if there's like a material science thing to stealth design and like the airframe
Well,
or stealth design and the materials used. Is that in the lore? Like I just don't know,
I'm not sure, but you
especially
would
for some of
think.
those Xperia ships. Um, it just seems like a way of making that a gameplay component. Um,
Yeah,
that
and
would
they could explain it away with something because I do want it to be realistic, but at the end of the day, I want it to be fun more than realistic.
Mm.
agreed.
And your ship, you know, being picked up even like 5 or 2 kilometers away, or like someone wants to take the Corsair out alone, they should be able to do that and not know that their ship's going to get blown up while they're down there.